welcome to my presentation. So I did my capstone project on empowering teachers through PLC data to maximize student growth. And the reason that I chose this, I wanted a topic that would actually help us at Arvin Center. And we desperately needed this. Our PLC did not have strong leadership, and I've been the leader for the last 5 years, so that's on me. We had no purpose to our meetings. We had no discussions. Our discussions had no focus. We were often talking about budgets and things like that. It was not PLC related. And then because we had such great students at our school and they were so strong and doing so well, we had so few failures, there was real no push to try to improve anything. So the questions I came up with, I was wondering if we create a goal, set an agenda, have roles for all of us at the meeting, would that help improve our focus? What type of data should we collect so that we can see where our students need improvement? And then how do we use that data? Because we haven't ever done this before. We have collected data before and looked at it, but then we never did anything with it. And I think we all kind of did that on our own. We did not do it as a PLC together. So the first thing we did was we met with the math department and the career pathway. I met with those leads. They gave me some insights onto how they conducted their meetings and some things that I could change with mine and tried to help give me some tips. The math teacher gave me her data collection forms so that I had something to start with. She gave me her agenda so that I had a nice form that we can fill out and follow along with. And so after meeting with them, we were talking about how the meetings are held. I asked them if they had roles, and they don't actually have roles for their PLC, but their PLCs are very focused and they didn't feel like they needed to have the roles. They showed me the data they collect, and theirs was mostly based on standards. And then, like I said, she gave us the forms that she uses, and then the discussions that they have regarding the data and how they used those to be able to change their lessons. For example, they use theirs for building thinking classrooms. They knew that students needed to be discussing things and up out of their seats, and they wanted to see if building thinking classrooms would help them, and it did. But because they were a PLC and working together and collecting data, they were able to physically see that there was a change. They wouldn't have been able to prove that without having the data. So our first real meeting, our first real PLC meeting after 5 years of me being here, we finally had one. And in that first meeting, we created goals. And so here's our goals: to collect data to serve as baseline for future years, to use that data to modify our instruction to meet our students' needs, and to achieve 80% student mastery for all state standards. I don't know if that's a pie in the sky number or not, but we will find out as we're going along. And then we also created a monthly schedule. In the past, it was always, what do you want to do? Should we meet as a big group, or should we just break up into smaller groups? So this way we had a schedule to follow and the locations of all of our meetings. We also created norms, which we had never done before. The math department had norms, and she gave me an idea of what hers were, and I used some of those, but we created these together as a team. I didn't make them and just say, here you go. So all conversations stay on topic. We start on time, because that was a big one for us. The meeting length, we tended to take every minute of our planning period, and that gave us nothing. We were rushing to our rooms to try to prepare for our classes. Come to the meeting prepared. Have a common method to collect and store data, actively collaborate, and then fill out the agenda one day ahead of the meeting date. We created roles because I felt like our PLC needed that. We have a little trouble staying on focus, and so I'm the lead teacher. I was given that role, and then we have someone who is keeping time and making sure that we're moving along with our agenda. We have someone who's taking the notes for us so that it's not me trying to lead a meeting while also taking all of the notes. And then we have a conversation taskmaster because we felt like that was important for us. to try to keep those conversations under control. And so we've got someone that can say, okay, let's get back on focus here. And so the reason we came up with these was to keep our conversations focused and maximize our time together. So data collection, we all collected different things. PBS collected averages for formative and summative assessments, but not all the teachers gave common assessments. So we made them and we had them ready to go. And when I asked, oh, what was your data? A teacher said, oh, I forgot to give that. Okay, well that's fine. And they were too far ahead now to go back and give that common assessment. Okay, well how about the next one? Did you give that one? I wasn't there yet. Did you give the next one? Oh, I forgot that one too. So we have to get better about that. That's one of the things that we need to work on. There's no point in having common assessments if we're not all gonna give them. HBS collected averages. Chemistry, he has come from a school where they had a very strong PLC, and he has a very distinct way that he collects his data. And you actually have access to all of these. You've got, it's Appendix B that you have in front of you printed there. And so chemistry, if you flip to that page, you can see the way that he did that, and it's significantly different than the rest of ours. He had the grades for every single student on here, with their names removed, and then the percentiles and all that. Biology, we used pair assessment, and so that's where all of these charts came from, which was really, really helpful. Jeremy and I really liked pair assessment. And we were able to link our test questions to standards, so we've got standards data that goes into here. AP Biology calculated standard deviation, score distributions by percent. The answer choices, it tells you, this is from ZipGrade, it'll tell you which students answered which multiple choice answer for each question, and pair assessment does that as well. MI provided just averages for one of their assessments, and then we didn't have any data provided from BI, but that's also more of a project class, so she may not have had any data in time for that first meeting. After collecting all this data, and you can see all the different things that we had on here. Another one that I looked at was study guide completion versus their test grade, and I really, really liked this data, that it showed the correlation between more kids that got out of the students who got an A, more of them completed their study guides compared to the ones that got a failing grade, only half of them did their study guides. And I really liked that, and I showed the students that to let them know, please do your study guides, they really do help you. But we did notice after doing all of this, I've got all these pie charts and everything that help to show the percent changes, going from the very last page, AP Biology, going from Unit 1 to Unit 3, you can see a big change. The students have learned something. It may not have always been content, but they learned how to study. And so the A's increased significantly and the F's decreased significantly, just going from Unit 1 to Unit 3. So that impressed me. So I think looking at our data, you can see that there's definitely growth here. We noticed that our PLC time was much more focused. Our conversations were much more focused. We actually had meaningful discussions. Like when I left some of these meetings, I was excited about what we had talked about. We analyzed data and we collaborated together to make lesson plans, which we often did that in the past anyway. It just wasn't structured. It was more like, here's what I've started, let me share it with you and you can finish it. And so this time we were actually sitting down and making our lessons together, and then also creating those common assessments. So some of the key findings, like I said, it was very interesting to see all the different data that we had collected and all the different ways we had collected data, because everyone collected it slightly differently. And so each way provided a new way to look at student achievement. And we had to go through and decide, we actually did this in our last meeting, and decide what's the best way to collect data in the future. Since we are no longer having core classes at our school next year, we don't have the standards for our electives on pair assessment. And that seemed to be the big draw for pair assessment, was being able to have the standard linked to all the questions and being able to get that data. And so we're gonna have to do that by hand next year with our standards. And so we decided not to go forward using peer assessment anymore, and we're gonna use ZipGrade. They still provide it per question with all of the data, and then we can connect just by hand, we'll just have to do our standards unless we can find some other way around that. But I liked how we each had different platforms for the data collection and being able to show it in a different way. The challenges are though, when you have all these different ways, how do you compare the classes, especially the ones that lead into the next one, the PBS, because if we keep doing this, we want to track these students over the 4 years that they're here, and how do you compare PBS to HBS, which is the next class, if you don't have the same way to collect your data? Oh, and we also noticed that teachers graded our common assessments differently, so even though we had the same test, especially when it came to the open response portions of those tests, we weren't all grading them the same. Some of us graded a little more harshly, while others were a little more lenient in their grading. And so we need to come to an agreement on where should we fall as far as that goes. And we can't you can't have one teacher give it 2 points and the other give it 3 points, because then if you're looking at averages, then that's not gonna make any sense. And we also had some teachers who, with the whole entire common assessment one was on 20 points, one was on 30 points. And how do you compare that? So we do have to make sure that once we create our common assessments, we then sit down and discuss how we're going to grade them. Biology did that after our first, I had noticed the year before that we had done this mistake and graded differently. So we talked about it beforehand and made notes on our test and still had some differences in our grading. And so that's just something that we can keep working on, some little fine tuning there. So the barriers to successful meetings, absences due to illness, that's our absences. We had a lot of illness going around with all the flus, and it wasn't just the teachers getting the flus, our kids have the flu or whatever, and so then they're not there, and it's hard to have an effective meeting if a third of your teachers are not there. We had so many NTI and snow days that interrupted our meetings, so as we're getting this nice momentum, that all of that January is when we really were getting into that good momentum, and all those snow days and NTI days threw us off. And then we found out about the changes in the class offering for next year, and so the teachers, like myself and Mr. Hess, who teach the core classes, and we found out they're not gonna be offered next year, and we just spent the last 5 months collecting data for, it felt like nothing. It's still useful for this year, but, so we were feeling a little deflated. We didn't know who was even gonna be here next year. And so that really led to a loss of motivation to continue collecting data that we knew we were never gonna use again. And so our meetings, we ended up skipping a couple of meetings, or we would get together and our meetings weren't as focused as they were in the past. We would have no agenda, so there were times I didn't know what to talk about because we're still collecting data as we go, but I don't know, we're just kind of at a loss. We didn't know what to do with our core classes anyway. The other classes are good. And then we've got new classes coming up and we don't know what to do with those yet. We just found out what we're teaching and don't know how to get started with it. So how can we improve for next year? We need a stronger foundation to really get that PLC momentum going. It would be great if we could offer some sort of a professional development to help everyone understand the purpose of a PLC, because I think only some know what you're actually supposed to be doing in a PLC, and there has been pushback when we are trying to follow those guidelines. There are those 4 questions that are supposed to be answered in every PLC meetings, and I know of 2 teachers that can rattle them right off, but most of us cannot, and I think some people would be they would have no idea what I'm even asking them if I said, what are the 4 questions a PLC should be able to answer? Myself, I was home raising kids when all of the PLC stuff came about, so I left school. I taught for 9 years, and I left for 10 years, and that's when all the PLC stuff came about, and so I didn't know what it was. I just thought it was getting together and planning. It would be great to have a facilitator to help organize our meetings and help keep us focused. Drop-in observations from admin would help to keep us accountable. If we know that someone's gonna be poking their head in at every meeting, we're gonna be more likely to stay focused and have those meetings. We have to make sure that for next year we have our agenda form ready to go before the meeting starts, but we need to fix our current agenda form. It's huge. We never fill in all of the columns that are in there because I just took what math had. And I adjusted a little bit, but it's probably great for math, but I don't think it was great for us. And so that's something that we need to work on and get that fixed and then use it consistently every single time. I do think that every single meeting we need to remind everyone what our goals are, what our norms are. I see that at meetings when a district person comes in, here's our norms. And I never saw the point of it in the past, and now that I'm running meetings, I see the point of having norms. But stating our goals every time, it'll just help refocus us again. Decide on common data collection forms, which we already did. We're gonna use ZipGrade. Decide on common grading practices. Maybe we need to grade together. Maybe we get those common assessments during our planning period, and that's when we're gonna grade those tests, and then that way, wait, what do you think about this answer? And how many points should we, maybe we don't, maybe it shouldn't be 3 points, maybe this question should only be 2. And then how do we differentiate learning? We don't do a whole lot of differentiating. Part of that is because most of our students are already advanced, and so we're kind of more on that advanced end, but we definitely have students that are not advanced, and they should have some type of differentiation. And then remediation, if there's a way that we can offer that, and I think with our schedule for next year, I think we can actually figure out a really good way to offer remediation to our students next year. We just need to talk about that and discuss how we're gonna go about that process to make sure our students, and maybe we can get that pie in the sky number of 80%. And that is the end of my presentation. Does anyone have any comments or questions?
I think it's really well done, Jennifer. Some good stuff, and I love that you were vulnerable in the like, oh, this is us, right? This is our PLC needs to own this. Like Stephen and I, we can all say do this in your PLC, but until that collective group makes those decisions, so you being vulnerable and putting this together is extremely beneficial. And like one of the pieces I love is that we've already identified on that side of strengthening the foundation. The PD is coming. We have planned that. The 4 questions, we're gonna revisit all of that again between now and next year. The facilitator piece is in the works even also. So I think like in the drop-in observation piece, we'll be in the same common location, which will help solve a lot of that. So a lot of your findings are things that are helping drive us as a whole building, right? So I think that's really valuable to take that data just in the same way as a large PLC of Arvin. What are the things that we need to put back in play because of teachers in, teachers out, changes in curriculum, changes in opportunity. So this is fabulous. I love it. Yeah. And, so I have some questions, but I think they don't need to be now. Like I think there's some follow-up for the 3 of us to do with you to help steer some of this stuff for our things that we have already been thinking about in that. So yes. I don't want to necessarily do that to you now.
Well, thank you so much.
Yep, good stuff.
Appreciate it.